Hey there, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Karen.
And I'm Jonelle.
Each week, one of us brings a topic to the table, something we've been wrestling with, something we've been thinking about, reading about, or noticing in our own lives.
And the other reacts in real time. No scripts, no prep, just an honest conversation between a mother and a daughter, spanning generations, about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power, and inherited patterns.
We don't always agree, and it's not always comfortable, but we show up it anyway.
Yeah, we do. Let's wake up. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Okay, I have a couple announcements.
Yeah.
Same announcements we've been going the last couple weeks, but great reminders, or do we want to do reflection first?
Doesn't matter. Go.
Okay, let's start with announcements. So as you all know, Banned Book Club, it's coming up next week. It's Tuesday, February 10th at 5:15 p.m. It's over Zoom.
Pacific time.
Great call out, Pacific time. It's over Zoom. You have to RSVP to get the Zoom link, but it's totally free. Please, even if you haven't had time to read the book, it is still going to be such a great conversation. I just finished the book and I'm dying to talk about it. So it's the Book of Unknown Americans. Please go RSVP on our website. I sent out another email earlier this week, so check that as well. Yeah, so it's first announcement. Second one, SYM Bingo is next week. This is, again, a Seattle event. So if you're local to Seattle, come on out. It's an organization I volunteer for. It'll be so much fun. Your bingo donations go to an organization that supports street youth in the U District of Seattle. So it's at Ravenna Brewing Company from 6 to 8 p.m. next Thursday, February 12th. I hope to see you there. And then the part that some of you might love the most is I'm going to be the caller. So I do the bingo calling. And so if you're not sick of my voice yet, come on down and join us. It should be a really fun time. Yeah, so those are my announcements.
I have an announcement. One of our listeners gave me feedback on Instagram, which was such a great way. You tend to look at the emails. I'm watching the Instagram.
Love it.
But they talked about the Watchful Dragon, the episode that we did on the Watchful Dragon. And they talked about how does that Watchful Dragon aid us in defensiveness. And so I broke down the thinking of that. I think, first of all, defensiveness is interesting because I was thinking a lot about that after this comment. We know when we're being defensive, when we're trying to kind of prove our point.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of one of the things, what is defensiveness? We all have been in both spaces before of conversation where we can be in a conversation and we don't feel defensive. We might be opening and listening. And we also know the same kind of conversation, but we're feeling defensive, which is, wait, here's my point. And I don't feel like it's getting across.
Yeah.
I think where the Watchful Dragon plays a role is the Watchful Dragon is trying to protect our ego, trying to protect our inherited biases, our, like you said, our algorithms, our internal algorithms. So I think when we see that dragon coming out, which can act like defensiveness, it should actually be more of a warning than it should be. They exist. It exists. Our biases exist. Our inherited bias exists. But if we keep putting those up front, if we keep putting the dragon up front, we're not going to be able to engage in the conversations we desire. So I hope that kind of makes sense on that one, because I think it was a little confusing. And I think they were also talking about the language of, when is it in the space that we're not using our voice, like we're surrendering our points of view?
Yeah.
And I think we can have our points of view without being defensive.
I
think And I guess maybe that's the barometer is are we trying to protect that ego, or are we trying to have a conversation that is opening to listening?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key, and we've talked about this, is your intent to listen?
Yeah.
Because so often I think, and we've all done this, you find yourself, and you can even see other people, is they're listening to respond. And I think that's when it starts to move in defensiveness territory, because your intent is to get your point across.
Yeah.
Your intent is listening for cues that you can react to, as opposed to just listening.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't mean you can't get an opinion across. It doesn't mean you can't put in your perspective, but your whole intent in that conversation isn't about your perspective.
Yeah.
It's about listening to understand.
And it's really hard because our watchful dragon listens for the triggers.
I know. I still hate that term.
I know. But I was thinking about this interview I saw about this hunter the other day. And right away, my watchful dragon said, I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that. Killing animals and so forth. But this hunter, what was beautiful about the interview was it was extremely nuanced, and it allowed for both perspectives. And this hunter eats all the food he hunts. He uses all the blubber for the oil, his daily oil. He's very sustainable. And he made me consider, well, I eat meat, and so I kill animals through the meat I eat, and yet I don't call myself this hunter. So I thought about this, like, right away I wanted to be defensive. Thank God it was an interview on TV, so I didn't jump in. But I thought, wow, good for the reporter to let it go long enough to hear both sides of the story, because it's changed my perspective. So anyways,
I love that.
Yeah, maybe the watchful dragon is the one that's, I know.
I can't wrap my head around.
But maybe it's the dragon that's listening to our triggers and wants to jump in at the trigger. Because the minute they said hunting, I was triggered. And I wanted to jump in, but I couldn't.
Every time you describe it, we've had 3 episodes of this conversation, and I feel like I hear a different perspective on it. And so I think just for me, I'm struggling to wrap my head around it, but that does not mean it's not useful to you or other listeners that it resonates with. Like, I don't want to take away from that. Like, if it clearly is resonating with you, and I love that, and it's helping you do your internal work. So, like, keep thinking about.
Well, maybe there's this thing that is out there that is trying to protect our triggers, and it allows us to jump into
it doesn't fully.
Anyway, okay, let's go on. Let's go on.
It's interesting. I had a reflection that came from the book, but I might save that until the book club and then next week, and so we can just kind of move into my topic.
Yeah.
But it's a great book. Even if you don't come to the book club, I really recommend The Unknown Americans. It was beautifully written.
Yeah, beautifully written.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. What's your topic?
My topic today, I want to set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
So
you're so good.
It's something I witnessed this weekend, and it's a story. And for audience members, this was one of the hardest things to keep from Karen, from this conversation, because this is like real time happening, and I just wanted to talk, but I knew we were recording, and so I waited. So setting the scene, setting the context, I was in Hawaii this weekend,
that's why you look a little tan.
That's why I look a little tan, anyone looking on YouTube. But I was in Hawaii this weekend for a friend's wedding, and the story is not about the wedding. The wedding was a beautiful celebration of love. It was spectacular and amazing, and I won't go into that more, but so happy for the couple and so grateful to be involved in that day. But this conversation, setting the scene, came from my day at the pool. And so for context, I've heard about pool etiquette in Hawaii. Now, this is only the second time I've been to Hawaii, so I am outside of quote-unquote pool etiquette. And from what I've heard from other white friends of mine is the pool etiquette in Hawaii is you throw down your towel early in the morning to save your chair, and then you leave, and you maybe don't come back until you're ready to go to the pool. That has not been my experience at other resorts, but I do want to give context here of that
That's what you heard.
I've heard
I was
is
going to say, that
around
doesn't seem like etiquette, but go ahead.
etiquette rules. Etiquette's not the right. The underlying rules, the unknown rules of the pool. So, for context, at this resort, there were 6 big cabanas, and each cabana was actually split. So there was 2 different sides. So, like 2 different groups of people could use one overhanging cabana, and I go by the rules, like, when we're always at resorts, I'm usually the one who's up early. I secure our spots, and I lay there all day, and people in the group come in and out, but I know I lay there all day. And there happened to be this family who took over a giant cabana, left their stuff there all day, and consistently either never showed up or didn't show up until, like, much later in the afternoon.
Like 2 o'clock or something.
And also for context, these cabanas had TVs in them, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they'd have both the TVs on. It was just there was some things going on that I didn't necessarily agree with. But anyway, so they did that for a couple days. No one said anything, but I saw day after day, people would walk by that cabana and realize, oh, we can't go in there. It's empty, but someone's obviously securing it or using it. There was and for context, this is a white family. But it was a white progressive family when I heard them talking. So I think that's good context for, they came from a large city, so they were understanding community boundaries. Then
they talked like they did.
They talked like that.
Yeah.
The conversations politically and conversations wise. Then one afternoon, a Black family came by, and the cabana was clearly not being used. It also, there was enough light stuff that it looked like it could have also been stuff that the resort left there, like games or towels, like not that a family was actually occupying it. So they sat and used the cabana. And it was great to actually see the cabana being used because no one else had been showing up. The very next morning, they came around 8 a.m. as I did, and they sat in the cabana. And they were there and they were hanging out. And a white woman, she was the grandma of the group, but probably in her 70s. She came down, and it wouldn't surprise anyone. There was definitely a tense conversation that happened. A lot around, well, these are the rules or these are the expectations. We put our stuff down, like they're,
So this was the next day, though. They hadn't put any of their stuff down.
No, they had put their stuff down. But again, it was the same.
But they didn't come back.
It was like
till hours later.
Every day around 7 o'clock, they'd put 2 towels and some games down and turn on the TVs and then claim it as theirs, but never come back.
Yeah.
So again, it could be misinterpreted that these games were part of the resort or something.
Yeah.
So this family was there, and this Black family was actually there, occupying it, having a great time. One of the family members came down and basically said, no, this is ours. We have been claiming this. There were some aggressive tones used, aggressive conversations, but a lot of the conversation was literally about, like, this is how this works. This is how, like, this is our space, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of entitlement words going on and stuff. So that's one thing I want us to kind of get into. But the second thing that was shocking, so the white woman left. She left in tears. She left with the context of, I'm going to go get someone to tell you, you're wrong. Essentially, like, you need to leave.
White woman tears.
White woman tears.
Oh, God.
I didn't intend to insert myself in this situation.
Oh, no.
But I then walked around. I was at the cabana next door. I walked around after this woman left, and I just wanted to let them know I felt that they were in the right. Like, I felt like they had claim to this. They were here, all of that kind of stuff. As we were continuing to have the conversation, the white woman came back, and same conversation arose again, but I started speaking this time.
Okay.
And I spoke with my understanding of the rules of the resort of, I also have a party here, and a large party, but I come down at 8 a.m. every day and sit in the cabana, and my friends come in and out. We're utilizing it all day, or at least I'm here all day.
Yeah, someone's there.
Stuff. And the tone of the white woman completely switched. And she was no longer aggressive. She was now biting her lip of things she wanted to say to me. And I have never experienced.
When you say biting her lip, give me an example.
You can tell she still wanted to keep fighting the subject. but because now a white woman was having the same conversation and the same viewpoints, she no longer had the push of her perspective. And it's something that I've heard about. I have not witnessed to that extent.
It's white privilege.
The white privilege of that extent. I think so that's kind of what I wanted to set the scene and talk about of a bunch of things. So two things in my mind that I wanted to bring up with that are the world of white entitlement. Of this entitlement of we put our stuff down, so we've claimed this as ours. Whether we're using it or not, we've claimed this as ours. And what I spoke to this woman was, I've watched all week as people have walked by and have not been able to use that. I understand you wanted to use it, but come back later. Because there were plenty of people who come in and out of the pool all day.
Or just stay there
or stay there like I did. And she did end up staying there then the whole day that day.
Because she noticed someone was missing.
And then she got really mad because her family didn't show up until about 3:30 that day and stuff. And so she was very frustrated by them not coming earlier and not hanging out. And but anyways, it's this conversation about where our entitlement comes from and where in these community spaces, why we feel like these are the rules that are for us. And it's okay.
The interesting thing is, did she try to get the manager, and would the manager not have held up her rule?
I don't know. I know is we saw her heading in the direction of the front desk. She did not come back with anyone.
Well, I was going to say,
I also presented that. I said, when I checked in, I heard cabanas were first come, first serve as long as you were at the pool. And so that's what I said my understanding was.
Well, it's interesting because the first thing I was thinking when you were talking about this, but isn't this the challenge, is this is why we like rules. So that there's clarity. And yet, unfortunately, when the rule is constantly bent for the person in favor, there you can see the frustration. So imagine if the manager, I'm kind of proud because it does sound like the management said, actually, you're in the wrong.
We don't know for a fact, but they didn't come back to
But it's a perfect example of, weren't you talking about, either you were talking about it in the context of here or another time, someone as having neurodiversity, having clarity in boundaries and communication is really important for you because you know actually what it is you need to do within that space. And so this is a really good example, is someone who feels privileged, someone who feels entitled. They may come a lot, and so they feel like they own the place. I'm not trying to defend them because I too am the same way as you are. I feel very uncomfortable. In fact, one time, the funny story, we end up using this one cabana when we're in Mexico a lot. And we had to leave, remember, one day, and we didn't tell the people around us that we weren't going to be there that day, and they actually saved it for us.
They saved it for us. They did. Because again,
I think their family probably used it well.
Totally.
But I agree with you. I think the clarity of rules are actually really important. And when we constantly, I think this is what we're frustrated with our government right now, right?
But I want to step back a little bit to the rule thing, because I think the thing is, listeners out there might be saying, though, but they thought they were following a rule. Like, they put down their stuff, they put down their...
Because it was like this given rule of what people experience in Hawaii.
And this is what I want. And so that's why I gave the context of, this is the quote-unquote etiquette of Hawaii. But the reason I give that context is this is what microaggressions are. I think we've talked a little bit about this before. I think a lot of people's understanding of microaggressions, they feel, are slighted insults. But actually, so Dr. Gerald Wing Sue, who's the one who coined the term racial microaggressions, actually talks about them as these boundary setters. So they are unwritten rules that white society creates to create boundaries for social hierarchies. And so that's, to me, that's the interesting thing, I think, again, in a lot of progressive, well-meaning people assume because they're not insulting, they're not overtly a racist, that like they are also not committing microaggressions.
Yeah.
But what happened here, these were microaggressions.
Yeah.
This woman trying to uphold this unknown rule, this etiquette of, again, potentially resorts in Hawaii, but that is an unwritten rule, and that is and so it is a microaggression when there's not clarity. And so yes, we've talked about this with neurodivergency too, like in the workforce. This is why they often say workforce clarity is so important for people of color and neurodivergent people, is because they need to understand the real
how
expectations
to play within the system,
not the unwritten rules.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you even talk about that, because I think it's fascinating because we come to the table with different cultural rules or different cultural norms.
Yeah.
I remember, this is off a little bit, moving off your subject.
Yeah, but really quickly saying that's a great point. This woman, who was a white woman, did not back down until all of a sudden a white person had a different cultural norm than her.
Yeah.
And then that's where she was able to recognize, maybe I am in the wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that was both shocking for her and I mean, shocking for the whole conversation.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying, where she was biting her lip. You could see the shocking for her.
How come she went into tears?
Because
she wasn't getting what she
wanted.
Yeah.
So what happened was they were only occupying half of the cabana. So she could have still had the other half. What brought her to tears is she kept walking then to my cabana and then realized all the cabanas were already full of people who were actually using them. And so then she walked back and started crying because she just realized she couldn't get what she wanted.
She couldn't get what she wanted.
And she was frustrated because they had set this boundary up all week. And then now all of a sudden, the end of their vacation, they weren't getting what they wanted.
Well, I think, so it's interesting when you talk about unknown cultural norms or these kind of things that happen in cultures. I remember when we first moved from the Midwest to the Northwest, it's very much kind of a cultural norm in the Midwest to have a very manicured or well-tendered front yard. Don't know about the backyards, but most people, a lot of, or at least in the neighborhoods, so, white suburban Midwest, tended front yards. I remember moving to the Northwest, and because it's kind of organic, a lot of people love to garden. Gardens yards are just used, and they're not always tended very well. And I remember thinking, wait, where are the rules? Like, I thought that was a rule. I actually thought growing up, tending to your front yard was kind of like what everybody did. And so I think about that a lot as our country is getting more diversified and people are coming from their different cultures and they're coming and we're sharing these spaces. And I wonder, how that dialogue could have existed where both didn't feel threatened, wasn't threatened, but kind of had a discussion on what we thought was real, right?
Well, I mean,
I'm sure that most pools in, hotels, they do have a rule up there that says you have to be there. So
but
this
again,
woman was clearly not following those rules.
As we know, and this is why I bring up, though, the unspoken rules, because I'm sure every resort has that. But as you and I know, we have a couple friends who go to Hawaii regularly, and they have told us that is the way you secure your spot. And stuff. And so that's why I do know in the back of my head that is an unwritten rule for people who go to Hawaii. And I hadn't experienced it at our other resorts, but so this is like my added on piece to it, that it seems to be a white unwritten rule of how you do that. But this is where I wanted to then talk about adding to your place about where white entitlement fits.
Yeah.
Because white entitlement is exactly what you're speaking to about the yard. So white entitlement often isn't about dominance. It feels like a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
It feels like something that's normalized. It's not, I deserve
Well, because
this.
we're the majority. I
Yes.
mean, whites for years now, we're not necessarily. We're the majority. And
Yes.
so the way we did things.
But I think so often, again, well-meaning people see the white entitlement as like, oh, it's someone who's like, I deserve this because I'm white. No one's thinking that.
No.
They're thinking, white entitlement is thinking, well, this is how it always works. I'm asking nicely.
Yeah.
Like this is, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, because that's my understanding of the world and that's how I've seen it. And so that's the white entitlement here. It's not this overtly big splash, even though this was like a larger conversation, but it's the subtleties. And that's why I love the term microaggression, because it is the subtleties of I have power over you, or my knowledge, my culture is right and expected over you.
Yeah, I like the way you just said that my culture, especially in the United States, like I imagine if I were to go and live, well, we know that we've traveled enough.
Yeah.
If I were to go to another culture and that was like a dominant way of presenting itself, we then would look like outsiders, right? And so it's so fascinating, our willingness to put others on the outside and to maintain this decorum or this effort of, like you said, entitlement, this effort of, but this is the way it's been done.
Well, and
right?
And you say that, like, actually you said something so perfectly that brought, and we've talked about this before, the traveling mindset. I don't know if you remember that. That was like months ago, about like you wouldn't go into another country. Well, you shouldn't go into another country putting your own expectations on things. Like you go in with the understanding of learning and how to integrate into that culture. And so again, I think it's so interesting though, us as like Americans, it's a white dominated, it is a white nationalist culture.
Protestant.
And so we have these like understandings that Americanness and white culture are the same.
Yeah.
And the reality is that's not the case, or it shouldn't be the case. But we don't always step back and look at the whole picture of how to live in community. And so,
it's funny. So speaking of culture, I remember the very first time my husband and I went to Spain, and we didn't know the culture of eating. So we went to, it was like it was noon. So we went to a restaurant and we ordered just, I think, like a soup. I mean, something very small, because we were going to have our big dinner at night, right? And my problem, I never researched the culture before I go into it. So anyways, the waiter was really concerned. I mean, he was really concerned that that's all we were going to eat. And, but he's fine. Okay, fine. And then dinner came around and we went to a restaurant and there was like bouillon soup. I mean, it was very, very light. There was no large meal offered at the restaurants at that time, because in Spain, their big meal is at lunch. And it would have been like me at dinner putting up a fuss and saying, what? You only have this? You only have this to offer? Where is my filet mignon, right? And so, we learned, and fortunately I have enough weight on me that I didn't go hungry. And then there's also, you could go out for tapas or whatever. So there's other ways to do that. But it is interesting, this kind of enforcement of what we think is right.
Yes.
And then expecting the world to run around for that. Yeah. When in fact, these people had clearly followed those rules and what that looked like.
I know. And so some kind of reflection work is like, are there things in life that you are pushing through because you're pushing your narrative through? Like, are there places in life that you maybe could sit back and listen or shift or adjust. I mean, where have you taken your perspective and put it on others instead of thinking about more the holistic view of stuff? It's kind of like, well, I'll close out with this a little bit to think about. Have you heard about the shopping cart theory?
No.
So I love this theory. A shopping cart theory is that essentially it kind of divides morality and community thinking in the sense that when you're at the grocery store, no one's really watching you. No one's telling you to put the shopping cart back. No one is watching you. There's not a shopping cart police. And so it's kind of
it's an unwritten rule. Isn't that funny?
But it's an unwritten rule of politeness in community. And there are plenty of people who don't put the shopping cart back, but there's a lot of people who do. And so it's kind of the conversation of like, what do you naturally do when no one's watching? And stuff. And I think, but it goes beyond that for me. It's more of, how do you view your place in community when no one's watching and stuff? And so I just think it's really interesting. So think to yourself, do you put the shopping cart back or do you just leave it in the parking lot?
Well, social norm. I mean, one of the things I think we've talked about, like Trevor Noah did a big thing on this back in 2020, I think it was, during George Floyd, the idea that our unspoken rules for community have collapsed.
Oh, yeah.
And we are only looking at what we get or what we deserve rather than thinking about holistically everyone involved. And so it's interesting that woman, ending it with your story, that woman then had to sit in the cabana waiting for her family, watching all the other families play.
She did.
And realizing that she really, I wonder if it changed her tune.
I don't know. Her husband sat with her for a little bit during it, but it
even a little bit. Isn't that funny?
Her sitting for hours and hours. And I'd watch her as I would go in and out of the pool reading. And I was nice and said hi and chatted for a bit. Because I also, you know, you still want to spread positivity in this world. And, you know, and she didn't say anything like racist, but there were she had a lot of microaggressions there and she wasn't aware of that. And so she meant well, like a lot of well-meaning white people. But it causes a lot of tension. It causes tension and it causes, and so maybe it was hopefully it was a growth moment for her.
Well, Jonelle, thank you. Oh my gosh, always something. That was a story that you didn't share with me.
The cabana drama is what we called it.
Drama. Okay, thanks for joining us at White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can also connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, or hello@whitewomenwakeup.com or on our website, whitewomenwakeup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, be open, and keep waking up together.
Bye.
Hopefully we see you at the book club.
Bye. Before we go, I want to do a quick playback on where these facts came from, because when you're talking about unconscious bias in well-meaning people, the receipts matter. The concept of microaggressions and that they function as corrections to maintain social hierarchies comes from Dr. Gerald Wing Su at Columbia University. His 2007 paper, Racial Microaggressions in Everyday Life, was published in the American Psychologist and has been cited over 48,000 times. The quote, "Death by 1,000 cuts" isn't just poetic. It's what psychological research published in Scientific American and Perspectives on Psychological Science, and calls this the measurable harm of microaggressions. The white entitlement piece on how privilege operates invisibly because we're socialized into seeing our expectations as normal rather than positioned, that is from Dr. Su's research on perpetrators are unaware of their power, published in a peer-reviewed journal, and his book, Microaggressions. Tone policing as a tool to preserve power structures, that is found in American Psychological Association's Ethic and Racial Studies, from the University of Yale to Drexel, documenting how disproportionately tone tone policing silences Black women when challenging injustice. All of these are peer-reviewed, all documented, and most of us were never taught to see it this way. Thank you again for listening, and keep waking up.